Beneath the enigmatic veils of Scotland's moors, where the whispers of the past blend with the sighs of the wind, lies a secret as old as time itself. I am Professor Shadow, your guide into the realms of the unknown and the forgotten. Join me as we delve into the haunting tale of Dr. Eliza MacGregor, a brilliant archaeologist whose thirst for knowledge led her to the very brink of the abyss. In her pursuit, she unearthed more than just relics. She awakened a legend that should have remained buried in the shadowy depths of Merlin's tomb, where history and horror intertwine. Eliza faced the unimaginable. From the betrayal of a trusted colleague to the unleashing of an ancient power, her journey was marked by terror and mystery. As we recount her harrowing expedition, remember, some secrets are kept hidden for a reason. What lies within the confines of these ancient walls is a story of curiosity, darkness, and the eternal dance of life and death. Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of darkness, where the line between the living and the forgotten is as thin as a shadow. This is the story of Merlin's tomb, a tale that will chill you to the bone. The morning mist hung low over the Scottish moors, a blanket of white that veiled the ancient secrets lying beneath. Dr. Eliza MacGregor, a renowned archaeologist, stood at the edge of the excavation site, her eyes fixed on the newly unearthed entrance of what she believed to be Merlin's tomb. Her red hair, as fiery as her spirit, was pulled back in a practical bun, and her hands, clad in dirt-stained gloves, rested on her hips confidently. "Dr. MacGregor," called out one of her assistants, "are you sure about this?" Eliza turned, her green eyes sparking with the thrill of the hunt. "This is what we've been searching for," she replied with unwavering certainty. The locals, gathered at a safe distance, whispered among themselves. They spoke of the legend, a tale passed down through generations, about Merlin, a powerful druid whose spirit was said to guard his final resting place. They warned of curses and wrathful ghosts. But Eliza was not one to be swayed by superstitions. As she surveyed her team, preparing to enter the tomb, Eliza recalled the many voices that had tried to dissuade her from this quest. Colleagues had scoffed, calling it a myth, a wild goose chase. Funding was hard to come by, as most academic circles deemed her pursuit a fanciful waste of resources. But Eliza had never been one to tread the beaten path. She was a trailblazer, driven by a passion for uncovering the mysteries that history whispered. Her mind wandered back to her childhood, to the nights when her grandmother would tell her tales of the ancient Celts and their mystical druids. Even as a child, Eliza felt a deep connection to these stories, a sense that there was truth entwined within the myth. Merlin's legend had always fascinated her the most. While others doubted, Eliza felt an inexplicable certainty in her bones that the legend was real. "I don't care about their doubts," Eliza had often said, her voice laced with determination. "The only question is, who's going to stop me from finding it?" Now standing at the threshold of a discovery that could change history, Eliza felt her heart race with excitement and a touch of fear. She knew that crossing into the tomb might unleash forces beyond her understanding, yet the call of the unknown was too strong to resist. "Let's uncover the truth," she said, stepping forward into the shadowed entrance of the tomb. The air was cool and still, as if untouched by time. Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that eyes, unseen and ancient, were watching her every move. As the darkness of the tomb enveloped her, Eliza MacGregor knew her life would never be the same again. The legend of Merlin, once a whisper in the wind, was now an echoing call in the depths of the earth, beckoning her forward. Ah, my dear nocturnal scholars of the macabre, it's time for a quick scare break. As we linger in these shadowy realms, A small favour I dare to ask. If my tales of terror bring you thrills, do not let our journey end here. Hit like, subscribe, and join our dark congregation. Now shall we delve deeper into the abyss. Let's embrace the darkness once more. Let's get back to the shadows. The air grew colder as Dr. Eliza MacGregor and her team descended into the depths of Merlin's tomb. The walls, etched with ancient Celtic symbols, seemed to pulse with a life of their own, the carvings illuminated by the beams of their flashlights. The passage narrowed, and the scent of earth and age filled their lungs. As they ventured deeper, the corridor opened into a large chamber. It was a living space, astonishingly preserved. The first thing that struck Eliza was the sense of recent occupation. A fire pit in the center of the room contained ashes that were not entirely cold. Beside it, a simple wooden table bore the marks of recent use, the wood surface smoothed by hands and time. "Look at this," one of her team members, Alex, whispered, pointing to a set of footprints in the dust. They were remarkably clear, as if made only days before. The team exchanged uneasy glances. The logical part of their minds knew no one could have been here for centuries, yet the evidence suggested otherwise. Eliza's heart raced as she moved towards a corner of the chamber where a collection of scrolls and ancient texts were carefully arranged on a stone shelf. Her fingers trembled as she picked up a scroll that seemed out of place among the ancient manuscripts. It was newer, the parchment less aged, the ink still dark and stark against the creamy background. Unrolling the scroll with a reverence befitting its possible historical value, Eliza's eyes widened in astonishment. The script was in an archaic form of Gaelic, but her years of study allowed her to decipher it. It was a druidic spell, one that purported to commune with the earth itself, to draw power and knowledge from the very soil and stone of the land. This can't be," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. The spell spoke of conversing with the spirits of the land, of drawing forth the wisdom of the ancients. It was a piece of living history, a direct connection to the practices and beliefs of a long-gone era. The team crowded round, marveling at the find. The reality of their discovery was overwhelming. Not only had they uncovered the resting place of a legendary druid, but they had also stumbled upon what appeared to be recent activity, a mystery that defied explanation. Eliza felt a chill run down her spine as she pondered the implications. The legend of Merlin had always hinted at his mastery over life and death, his connection to the earth so profound that it transcended time. Could it be that the spirit of Merlin himself had been here, using this very scroll to commune with the world beyond? The chamber seemed to close in around them, the shadows stretching and twisting in the flickering light of their torches. A sense of being watched, of being not alone in the depths of the ancient tomb, crept over Eliza. The line between legend and reality was blurring, and she knew that they were on the cusp of something both incredible and terrifying. As they prepared to explore further, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that they were delving into secrets that had been meant to remain hidden, secrets that might have been better left undisturbed. The weight of history pressed upon her, the whispers of the past echoing in the cold, still air of Merlin's tomb. The eerie silence of the tomb was shattered by a blood-curdling scream, echoing through the ancient corridors. Dr. Eliza MacGregor and her team froze, their hearts pounding in unison with the sudden rush of fear. Without a word, they turned and raced towards the source of the sound, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. They found James, one of the younger archaeologists, lying motionless on the cold stone floor of a narrow passageway. His eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling, his face ashen and lifeless. It was as though every ounce of life had been drained from his body, leaving behind a hollow shell. "God, no!" Eliza gasped, dropping to her knees beside him. She checked for a pulse, but there was none. His skin was cold to the touch, an unnatural chill that seemed to emanate from within. "This is wrong. We shouldn't have come here," murmured Sarah, another colleague, her voice trembling with fear. Her eyes darted around the shadowy corridor, as if expecting something to emerge from the darkness. Eliza felt a cold knot of dread in her stomach. She had heard of curses and hauntings, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. It was as if the tomb itself had come alive, exacting revenge for their intrusion. "We need to leave now," she said, her voice firm, despite the panic that threatened to overwhelm her, as the team hurried back towards the entrance. The ground beneath them suddenly shook violently. Dust and small stones rained down from the ceiling as they stumbled, trying to keep their balance. It was like an earthquake, localized and ferocious, centered right beneath their feet. When the shaking stopped, they reached the entrance, only to find it completely blocked. A massive pile of rocks and earth had collapsed, sealing them inside. It was as if the tomb itself had conspired to trap them, burying the entrance under tons of Ol's earth and stone. "No, this can't be happening," Alex shouted, his voice echoing off the walls in desperation. Before the they could react, another scream pierced the air. This time, it was Mark, another member of their team. They found him just as they had found James, lifeless, his vitality seemingly sucked away by an unseen force. Panic set in as the reality of their situation dawned on them. They were trapped, with no way out, in a tomb that seemed to be alive with a malevolent force. The legend of Merlin, once a fascinating tale, had become a nightmarish reality. Eliza tried to maintain her composure, to think of a way to escape, but the deaths of her colleagues weighed heavily on her. Whatever was in the tomb with them, it was powerful, ancient, and vengeful. They were not just archaeologists uncovering the past anymore. They were survivors, fighting against a darkness that threatened to consume them. As the team huddled together in the dim light of their torches, shadows around them seemed to move, to whisper secrets of a long-forgotten past. The tomb of Merlin had become their prison, and they knew that their fight for survival had only just begun. The flickering light from their torches barely penetrated the oppressive darkness of the tomb. The team stood in a terrified huddle, their breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. Suddenly, without warning, Alex was violently pulled from their midst, his scream slicing through the stillness as he disappeared into the darkness. "Alex!" Eliza shouted, her voice laced with fear and desperation. Without hesitation, she and the rest of the team sprinted after him, their footsteps echoing ominously in the narrow passageways. The chase was a blur of shadows and fear. Alex's screams echoed around them, bouncing off the walls, disorienting them. They turned corner after corner, but each time they found nothing but empty corridors and the chilling silence of the tomb. Finally, the screaming stopped as abruptly as it had begun. They found Alex in a small chamber, his body lying twisted and lifeless on the ground, his eyes wide open in terror. Like James and Mark, his life force seemed to have been drained, leaving him a mere husk. Panic surged through the team. One by one, they began to fall prey to the unseen terror that lurked in the shadows. Michael was next, then Lisa, each one pulled into the darkness, their screams a haunting echo in the ancient tomb. In the end, only Sarah and Eliza remained. They clung to each other, trembling, their minds struggling to comprehend the nightmare unfolding around them. The tomb had become a maze of death, its corridors a trap from which there seemed to be no escape. "We can't stay here," Eliza whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to find another way out." Sarah nodded, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. They moved cautiously, their torches casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Every sound made them jump. Every whisper of wind felt like a ghostly touch. As they navigated the labyrinthine tomb, Eliza couldn't help but feel that they were being watched, that the spirit of Merlin, or something far more ancient and malevolent, was stalking them, playing a macabre game with their lives. The air grew colder, the darkness deeper. The sense of an impending doom hung over them like a shroud. They knew that their chances of survival were dwindling with each passing moment, yet they pushed forward, driven by the primal instinct to survive. The tomb seemed to twist and turn around them, its corridors shifting, leading them in circles. Time lost meaning in the eternal night of the underground. Eliza and Sarah clung to the hope that there was still a way out, that they could escape the curse that had claimed their friends. But as the hours passed and the darkness seemed to close in around them, that hope grew dimmer. The tomb of Merlin, with its ancient secrets and its vengeful spirits, had become their prison, and they knew that escaping its grasp would take more than courage and determination. It would take a miracle. The sudden, unexplained disappearance of Sarah left Eliza frozen in shock. One moment, Sarah was right beside her, and the next, she was gone, as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. There was no scream, no struggle, just an eerie silence that amplified Eliza's growing sense of dread. Eliza's flashlight flickered weakly, its dim light barely cutting through the oppressive blackness of the tomb. Each beam seemed to struggle against the darkness, as if the shadows themselves were alive, trying to smother the light. She called out Sarah's name, her voice echoing off the ancient stone walls, but there was no response, only the haunting silence of the tomb. With every passing second, the weight of her solitude pressed heavier on Eliza. The darkness around her felt alive, a tangible presence that seemed to breathe and move with malevolent intent. The air was cold and still, yet she felt as if unseen eyes were watching her, following her every move. Eliza tried to move forward, her hands trembling as she clutched the flashlight. The beam darted across the walls, revealing cryptic carvings and ominous symbols that seemed to dance and shift in the flickering light. Her footsteps sounded unnaturally loud in the silence, each echo a reminder of her isolation. The tomb's corridors twisted and turned like a labyrinth, a maze designed not just to entomb the dead, but to confuse and entrap the living. Eliza's mind raced as she tried to remember the path they had taken, but the fear and the disorienting darkness made it impossible to think clearly. As she stumbled through the corridors, her mind was assaulted by terrifying visions. She saw faces in the shadows, twisted and contorted in silent screams, their eyes hollow and accusing. She heard whispers, voices that seemed to come from the very walls, speaking in a language that was ancient and unknowable. Eliza's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She felt a growing sense of despair, a realization that she might never find her way out, that the tomb would become her final resting place as well. Then, in the distance, she saw a faint glimmer of light. Hope surged through her, a desperate, clinging hope that there might be a way out. She quickened her pace, moving towards the light, her flashlight's beam dancing wildly as she ran. But as she drew closer, the light flickered and vanished, snuffed out by the overwhelming darkness. Eliza's heart sank. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The light was not an exit, but another trap. A cruel trick played by the tomb to lure her deeper into its depths. Alone, lost, and terrified, Eliza MacGregor continued to wander through the darkness, each step taking her further into the heart of the ancient tomb, each moment bringing her closer to an unknown fate. The horror of her situation was all-consuming, a nightmare from which there was no waking. The darkness was not just around her, it was inside her, a part of her, and she knew that it would never let her go. Eliza stumbled into a room that seemed untouched by time. In the center, illuminated by an eerie, ethereal light, sat an old man. His features were unnaturally aged, his skin like parchment, etched with the passage of centuries. He was dressed in a tattered robe, and before him lay ancient writing materials and scrolls. His hands moved with a slow, deliberate grace as he wrote. As Eliza's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she realized with a shock who this figure must be. "Merlin," she whispered, her voice barely audible. At the sound of his name, the old man stopped writing and turned towards her. His eyes, deep and dark, held the weight of ages, and when he spoke, his voice was like the rustling of dry leaves. "You know me, child of the modern age?" Their brief exchange was interrupted by the emergence of Sarah, dressed in a druid's robe. The sight of her, so out of place in this ancient setting, sent a chill down Eliza's spine. Around Sarah's neck hung a talisman, glowing with a faint, otherworldly light. "Sarah, what is this?" Eliza asked, her voice tinged with disbelief and horror. Sarah's expression was one of cold triumph. "Merlin is my prisoner," she declared, "bound to me by this talisman." She lifted the glowing object slightly, and as she did, Merlin winced as if in pain. Eliza struggled to comprehend what she was hearing. "But why? How?" "I was the one who tried to stop you from finding this place," Sarah confessed. "I knew if you did, it could jeopardize everything I've worked for. I need Merlin, his knowledge, his power, and now I need you." A horrifying realization dawned on Eliza. "The team? You were behind their deaths?" Sarah's eyes gleamed with a dark intensity. "Their life force keeps Merlin alive, strengthens the bond through the talisman. And now it's your turn. Your essence will be the final key. With it, I will unlock the full extent of Merlin's druidic magic." Eliza recoiled in terror, understanding the full extent of Sarah's betrayal. The deaths of her team, the traps in the tomb, it had all been orchestrated by Sarah to harness the ancient power of Merlin. Merlin, still seated, looked at Eliza with a gaze filled with sorrow and centuries of regret. "I am sorry, child. Bound as I am powerless to stop her." Eliza backed away, her mind racing for a way out, but Sarah advanced, the talisman glowing brighter. The room seemed to close in around them, the shadows stretching and twisting into grotesque shapes. "You will join your team, Eliza," Sarah hissed. "Your essence will be mine, and with it, the secrets of ages." Eliza's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was trapped, with a madwoman wielding the power of an ancient sorcerer. The horror of her situation was overwhelming, a nightmarish reality from which there was no escape. As Sarah raised the talisman, its light pulsing like a living thing, Eliza knew she was facing her final moments. The betrayal, the ancient magic, the unyielding grip of the tomb, it all converged in a terrifying crescendo, sealing her fate in the depths of the cursed tomb. As Sarah advanced with the glowing talisman in hand, a surge of adrenaline coursed through Eliza. In a desperate, split-second decision, she lunged forward, grappling with Sarah. The talisman, the source of Sarah's power and Merlin's bondage, slipped from Sarah's grasp, clattering to the stone floor. With a swift motion, driven by instinct and fear, Eliza kicked the talisman. It skittered across the floor and smashed against the wall, shattering into pieces. A blinding light erupted from the broken talisman, enveloping the room in a radiant glow. Merlin's form began to change. The centuries of age and confinement fell away from him like shackles being broken. His eyes blazed with a fierce light, and power radiated from him in waves. The transformation was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Sarah staggered back, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Merlin, now free from his bonds, turned towards her. His face was a mask of ancient wrath, a pent-up fury from centuries of imprisonment. With a gesture of his hand, he unleashed his power upon Sarah. It was a spectacle of elemental force, a torrent of fire and energy that seemed to consume her very essence. Sarah's screams were lost in the roar of the unleashed magic. Merlin then turned to Eliza, his eyes softening. "You have freed me, child of the modern age," he said, his voice resonant with power. "For that, you have my gratitude." But his freedom came with a price. The power that Merlin unleashed began to consume the tomb itself. Flames and arcane energies spiraled out of control, igniting the ancient stone and timbers. The tomb, Merlin's prison for centuries, was now ablaze, an inferno of magical fire. Merlin stood amidst the chaos, a smile of liberation on his face. The fire reflected in his eyes, but he seemed oblivious to the destruction around him, lost in the euphoria of his newfound freedom. Eliza, realizing the peril, turned to flee, but the flames were spreading too fast, consuming everything in their path. The heat was intense, the smoke suffocating. She coughed and stumbled, her eyes stinging as she tried to find a way out. But there was no escape. The fire was everywhere, a raging beast that devoured the tomb and its secrets. Eliza's last thoughts were of despair and resignation, realizing that her quest for knowledge had led to this tragic end. Merlin, still standing amidst the flames, remained untouched by the fire. His smile never wavered as the blaze engulfed the entire tomb, sealing its secrets and its occupants in a fiery tomb. The ancient sorcerer, finally free, was indifferent to the destruction around him, consumed by the joy of his liberation. The tomb of Merlin, along with its mysteries and its tragic final chapter, was lost to the flames, a forgotten relic of a bygone era, consumed by the fires of ancient magic. Years had passed since the tragic events in the tomb of Merlin. The moors of Scotland, ever shifting and mysterious, had reclaimed the land, obscuring the secrets that lay buried beneath. A new team of archaeologists, led by a determined and ambitious young man named Dr. Ian Campbell, had been drawn to the area by tales of undiscovered ancient sites. Equipped with modern technology and driven by the lure of historical discovery, they scoured the moors, following old maps and legends. One misty morning, as the sun struggled to pierce the dense fog, Dr. Campbell's team stumbled upon an anomaly in the landscape. The ground here was uneven, and there were signs of a collapse, a caving-in that suggested an underground structure. Excitement buzzed through the team as they cleared away earth and debris. Hours of painstaking work revealed a stone entrance, partially collapsed but unmistakably man-made. The thrill of discovery was palpable among the team members. Dr. Campbell, standing at the threshold of the entrance, felt a chill run down his spine. Despite the ruinous state of the entryway, there was a sense of foreboding, an aura of mystery and danger that seemed to seep from the very stones. He turned to his team, his eyes alight with the thrill of potential discovery. "This is it," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper, a mix of awe and apprehension. As his words echoed faintly in the cool air, the team gathered around the entrance, unaware of the tomb's tragic history and the secrets it still held. The story of Eliza MacGregor and her team had faded into obscurity, a forgotten chapter in the annals of archaeological exploration. Dr. Campbell took a step forward, ready to lead his team into the depths of the earth. The entrance to Merlin's tomb, once again uncovered, awaited them, its secrets shrouded in darkness and silence. The chapter ended there, leaving the fate of Dr. Campbell and his team a mystery, a new beginning at the cusp of an ancient tale. The legacy of the tomb, with its dark past and hidden power, lingered in the air, a silent sentinel to the cycles of curiosity and ambition that drive humankind in its ceaseless quest for knowledge.
And if you're still looking to fulfill your thirst for more horror, don't forget to check out this next video, unless of course you're frozen with fear already.